we're having a very intimate class today. There's only one person here in the room. Maybe some more will come, maybe not, who knows. And just, I think, 3 people online as well. But you should never underestimate the power of a recording, which in the past has really proven to be extremely influential. So at least we'll have this recorded, and those of us actually here can feel very special. We're spending our Friday night doing something wonderful. And the section that we're about to cover is very exciting as well. It's about transforming suffering into the path. So to explore that, we will first do a compassion meditation, revisiting our points from last class, and then we will go through the actual mind training slogans that are in this section of the text. So let's find a comfortable stationary position and then spend some time enjoying a wonderful compassion meditation together. Most of us will probably be doing this in the upright position, but it's also perfectly fine to be doing these practices while lying flat on our back. So if that feels preferable, please adopt a Shavasana position. And then after that, let's all spend some time adjusting the different parts of the body, seeing what feels right now in terms of elongating our spine, relaxing our shoulders, comfortably positioning our hands on our knees or thighs, or to the sides of our body if we are on our back. And then bringing our awareness to this wonderful field of material energy that is our body. Noticing the sensations arising within this field. Observing in particular the sensations of our body being in contact with the ground that's holding us. Mentally touching the earth in this manner with a sense of appreciation for the 5 elements that are present in the earth itself and are also equally present in our body. And then initiating the process of release as we gradually remove or release all the tension from our feet and toes, from the backside of our legs and our legs in general. From our abdominal muscles and our pelvic floor. Our shoulders, our face. Eventually expanding or extending our awareness to all the parts of the body equally, noticing all the sensations at the same time. Releasing tension. And allowing our breath to move naturally without any control from our side. allowing each exhalation to remove the tension throughout our body. Each inhalation to bring us the vital energy or the prana from the world around. And enjoying the very rhythm of breathing, due to its ability to gently rock our energy back and forth, soothing us as a child, helping us relax everything that needs to be relaxed, to bring energy to everything that requires that energy. And in particular, bringing some energy, some passion to our highest aspirations for contemplative practice in general. Revisiting those highest goals that we personally have on the spiritual or psychological path. For example, our aspirations related to full awakening, or to us fully liberating our mind from all types of suffering and the causes of suffering. That goal to mind into that resolves that we have. With that, bringing our mind to the theme of compassion, which is the wish for us and for all beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And using the very process of breathing as an example, even right now while we were breathing mindfully. The breath itself could potentially take away some of the unnecessary types of suffering or discomfort, in particular those related to rumination, to tension, to stress. But beyond that, there's so much more that could be removed if we only found the perfect instruments to do that. The perfect tools for liberation, our own and that of others. And so wishing for that freedom, for that liberation from suffering, first for ourselves, is an act of self-compassion, or training in self-compassion. May I be free from suffering and its causes. Sending this powerful wish into the depths of our being, into every cell, into every corner of the mind. And gently strengthening it with each new exhalation. May I indeed be free. And then gently extending that to others who, just like us, do not even want to feel the unnecessary physical tension, do not want to feel chronic stress, do not want to suffer from painful types of tension in the body, let alone all the tension in the mind. And indeed, if the unnecessary types of tension, contraction were removed, the mind would be wise, loving, compassionate, non-violent. Wouldn't that be lovely? And so, may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Sending that wish towards all beings, or even feeling how that wish arises from within themselves, from their basic goodness, from their Buddha nature, from their pristine awareness. Combined with our wish for their freedom, their own wish comes to the surface powerfully. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. For a few moments we can even imagine that happening. What would that feel like and look like if all who live genuinely became free and therefore happy? And then in the spirit of training in bodhicitta, which is the essence of this text, thinking, may I be able to do this, to bring all beings to freedom from suffering. And may all the realized beings inspire my mind on this path. Taking a few moments to feel or imagine that inspiration that's flowing into our mind from our own potential or basic goodness and from all those who have walked the path before. And then with that inspiration gently coming back to our body, introducing some movement to the body and concluding the preliminary meditation while still holding this idea of compassion in mind. Thank you. So we've reached a very interesting part of the text, which has to do with transforming problematic situations into the path. And this is a so-called point 3. The heading of this point is transforming adverse circumstances into a path to enlightenment. So this is about working with problematic situations in our life, what to do when we encounter sickness, heartbreak, when we see wars all around ourselves. There are currently 32 wars happening on the planet at the same time. So basically, when anything unpleasant or undesirable happens, how do we specifically use that as a fuel for our path? And the path here, of course, is the path of two bodhicittas. That's generally the Buddhist path of coming to full awakening. So just again, once again, to revisit this whole schema, Buddhahood, or the state of a Buddha, is defined in Mahayana Buddhism as a state in which all problematic mental states or destructive mental states have been removed. All the constructive and positive mental states, such as love, compassion, wisdom, and so on, have been expanded boundlessly. So everything good has been fully cultivated to infinity and beyond, and everything good has been completely removed. Everything bad has been completely removed, everything that causes suffering. So what's the definition of constructive and destructive there? Constructive mental states are those that bring happiness to ourselves and others at the same time. Loving kindness is a good example of that. It's good for us, it's good for others. It's good for our body, it's good for our mind, it's good for our social interactions, it's good for our society, it's good for global community. There's no area in which loving kindness would not play a positive role. It's a very simple thing, but it's extremely elegantly beautiful. And the same goes for wisdom, which is an exceptional level of common sense. Where can we find a situation that would not be benefited from us having common sense, from understanding what's what causes lead to which conditions, how to bring about the results that we want. Wisdom benefits everything from that point of view. Or similarly, generosity that's intelligent. Everything's benefited by it. So these good states bring happiness, and therefore we want to expand them. But the destructive states bring suffering, and those include, for example, jealousy and envy. Never makes anything better. Neurotic anger, neurotic attachment, arrogance. There's nothing that becomes good or becomes better because we are arrogant. Yes, there is a pride in a positive sense of that word, meaning self-confidence and confidence in who we are and being able to stand up in our and live our truth, as we say these days, and those are very meaningful qualities. But arrogance or being haughty or being conceited, no one ever says, "Oh, such a cute quality. He's a conceited jerk." I love that. That doesn't really happen. And the mental state that underlies all of these, the fundamental confusion about how it all works. So the fundamental confusion that does convince us that, neurotic anger and conceit and jealousy and neurotic desire, these are all cool things. And we say, oh, okay, there are cool things. That's nice. Let me dabble in them. Let me go deeper into them. So there's confusion about causes and effects and how all of these states are actually causes of suffering, but we think they're causes of happiness. And underlying that, the more primordial type of ignorance, which is confusion about how we actually exist and what is our actual true nature. So under the influence of this confusion, which is the opposite of so-called ultimate bodhicitta, which we have talked about in detail, under the influence of this confusion, we think that our deluded projections of reality, deluded interpretations of reality are real. So when we're trained in ultimate bodhicitta, which is a specific type of wisdom, we train in perceiving all reality as, for example, being like a dream, in that there's so much stuff that's simply projected by us. And we do not even understand that we projected all of that. But then we live as if our projections were true. And to quote Venerable Rabbeinu Kurtin, we are like children who drew a tiger and then got scared of it. So in our mind, subconsciously, quite often, because it's not a conscious process at this stage, we create all these illusions about reality, all these illusionary, incorrect interpretations of what we are, what others are, what the society is, how does it all exist. But then, as a result of all of that, we suffer. And there are very coarse examples of that and very subtle examples of that. Eventually, we need to arrive at the most subtle levels of this misperception and untie the knots there. And that's what ultimate bodhicitta is working with. But on a more coarse level, let's say we convinced ourselves that our racial group is the best racial group there is, and actually the only one that deserves to exist at all, and everyone else should be wiped out. So we made it up based on nothing, really, or based on our very profound fear of being incompetent and incomplete, and, oh, what if others compete with me? I know I'm not going to stand out. Let me now start hating all of them because I'm so afraid of who I truly am. So we start hating others based on this ridiculous interpretation of reality, and then we wage wars and we perform genocide, yada, 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 do incredible, horrible things that then create horrifying karma for us. But it was all completely made up, not based in any sort of reality, and stemming mostly from our fundamental existential fear of not even truly being sure we exist. So sometimes it's said that the nature of all these afflictions is fear, and in an attempt to attenuate that fear, to block that fear, we follow these specific afflictions. So jealousy tells us that we will overcome that fear if only we compete with others and we win. Conceit tells us that we will be free from that fear. We will reach safety if only we are better than others and we convince ourselves of that and we're sure of that. Desire is promising us freedom from that fear as long as we keep feeding it, as long as we keep getting the next piece of chocolate cake or the next divine partner or the next divine job or whatever it is that our desire is temporarily attracted to, and it will always find a new object. Anger tells us that this fear will be removed if we destroy the object of anger, or at least if we are able to push it away. If I'm able to block all these people, or kill them, or create systems in which they cannot gain access to me, well, it's all going to be wonderful. But no, I'm still the same messed up person with the same fundamental fear of being incompetent and not even truly sure I actually exist, and I can validly say that I'm good unless others tell me that 24/7. And so we have these fundamental fears that pervade every type of affliction. And the most basic one is us not even being sure we exist and being desperately afraid of not existing, which is why it's said that for some people, when they gain their first glimpses of emptiness, which is the absence of independent existence, therefore understanding that everything is interdependently existent. So denying independence, seeing interdependence, right? When some people gain that first glimpse of emptiness through meditation, or even simply through hearing teachings on emptiness or reading something in a book, a text on emptiness, for example. Some people feel joy because, according to the Buddhist view, they have previously practiced with this concept, so their mind is already bent towards this interdependent reality. When they hear that the independent, isolated self does not actually exist, there's nothing to protect here because there was never that isolated self that required protection. That there is an interdependent network, yes, but it's infinitely connected to everything and it expands into infinity. Well, when they hear that, they experience joy because, oh, all this time I thought, that's a Zen analogy, I thought that my backpack had this huge boulder in it that I had to suffer while carrying. I had to carry and suffer. And now I finally found out that my backpack was empty all this time. And it was only my mind that was bending me to the ground. That drama only existed in my mind. I made it all up. It's almost like waking up from a dream. That's why the Buddha is literally the awakened one. Someone who woke up from that dream of a separate, isolated, independent self. So we were waking up from that, and of course it's joyful. Ooh, this nightmare that I just saw, it was all a dream. And now I can enter my blissful reality where everything is interconnected. But some people, when they first experience glimpses of that or hear about that, feel existential fear. Oh, are you saying I don't actually exist? That's scary. Would I cease to exist when I meditate on all this stuff? Will this person sitting here stop existing? Am I going to annihilate my own mind, my soul, my stream of being, whatever it is that we think of based on our previous beliefs? And the actual answer there is no. This stream of being cannot be in any way undone. certainly not from a Mahayana point of view, and there's very, very valid reasoning that goes into that, and that can be explored in great detail by familiarizing ourselves with the works of Nagarjuna and other philosophers like that. But fundamentally, on a very practical level, no, there's now no cessation to this flow of being. This mind, and in particular its pure component, will extend into infinity. It will eventually transform into a Buddha, and that Buddha will exist perpetually. One moment of that Buddha's existence will be transforming into the next moment of that Buddha's existence, and then the next, and then the next, and it will be infinitely bringing everyone happiness and experiencing infinite bliss. So, no, I will not cease to exist, but my illusion of having a giant boulder in my backpack, that will cease to exist. And to help us arrive at the removal of that, we, on our way to Buddhahood, which is fully waking up from that illusion of having a boulder, we practice 2 bodhicittas. So bodhicitta literally means the awakening mind. Someone who possesses bodhicitta is called a bodhisattva, so a being of awakening, or translated from Tibetan, Jangchup Sempa, a hero of awakening. So bodhisattvas are those who possess the 2 bodhicittas to a great degree. And when we're just starting to generate those, we can call ourselves aspiring bodhisattvas. We aspire to fully practice the 2 bodhicittas, but at the moment our practice is on, kindergarten level, and that's absolutely fine. We do need to go through all the stages, one after another, and our bodhicitta will keep growing if we train in it. But we train in it by separating these 2 elements of it initially. One has to do with love, compassion, and altruism. That's relative bodhicitta, or conventional, because love and compassion unfold on the level of conventions. Conventionally, there is this person sitting here, there are other people sitting there, there are more people on Zoom. Some of them might be sitting, and some of them might be lying down, or, doing all sorts of things. And then beyond that, there are many more. And on this conventional level, this person can generate compassion for these other people. This person can practice altruism towards these other people. So in this dance of conventional selves, we can strengthen love, compassion, and altruism to an infinite degree. And then towards the end of that spectrum, say, the ultimate form of altruism is my wish to fully uncover my amazing potential to be of the greatest help to all. And then ultimate bodhicitta is the bodhicitta that sees that this entire dance of conventional selves is only interdependently existent, that none of these selves exist independently or inherently, that bodhicitta itself does not exist independently. It's a beautiful, amazing, incredible quality, but it's not a fixed entity that would be independent from everything else. And then the mind that deals with all of this, that experiences suffering and happiness and can generate bodhicitta or not generate bodhicitta, the mind itself is empty of being this frozen block of ice that's independent of everything else, and that the mind is also empty of being inherently the mind of a suffering being. No, it's empty, and therefore it can be transformed into something else, into the mind of a Buddha. And actually, from the point of view of some systems, it's not like we even need to transform this mind. We just need to realize that it has been the mind of a Buddha all along, but we were confused about our true nature. We just need to rediscover it. And it's these strategies for waking up to our true nature that we discussed when we were covering point 2, which is kind of the heart of this text. Part of this point is on generating ultimate bodhicitta. That's what we spent so many classes on, because it's a big discussion. How do we wake up to that wisdom that understands that everything is lacking independent existence? That's a big topic. For Buddhism, for quantum physics, for philosophy in general, there's lots to say there, right? And lots to meditate on. But then the second half of it was on cultivating incredible degrees of love and compassion, then putting them together and arriving at this altruistic state that says, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings. That's bodhicitta proper. That's conventional bodhicitta itself. That wish to become fully awakened, to bring happiness and freedom to all beings. And in training that, we talked a lot about this practice of Tonglen, or giving and taking. So Tonglen is a fusion of practices of loving kindness and compassion. to make Tonglen truly powerful, it's extremely good to first do lots of loving kindness meditations and lots of compassion meditations, and then to bring them together in this powerful form called Tonglen. And actually, there are more stages that can make it even more powerful, but they're not elaborately covered in this text, so we did not go through them. But to mention them briefly, there's a so-called approach of equalizing and exchanging ourselves and others. That's actually a necessary precursor to Tonglen proper. Within that practice, we would first learn to see that we and all the other beings are absolutely equal in our wish to be happy and in our right to be happy. From the point of view of this limited person, yes, I'm more important than others. I am more deserving of happiness because, yeah, blah, 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 something, something. But if there was an unbiased observer looking at all of us, for example, one of the Buddhas or a great bodhisattva or a great yogini, if they were looking at all of us, for example, feuding factions, they would see two groups of ridiculous people who are extremely confused and doing stupid things and harming themselves and others and the entire world, blah, blah, blah. But in terms of the true potential of all these confused beings would be seen as equally deserving happiness and freedom. Yes, once that confusion is removed, and the sooner we remove it, the better, everyone is equally deserving of the infinite bliss of Buddhahood. So that's equalizing. But equalizing in particular is about equalizing me and others. That's the trickier part, because it's actually easier to equalize warring factions that we're not involved in. Montecchi and Capuletti in Romeo and Juliet. Yes, they're both confused, silly, stupid, killed their children as a result of that, insanity. But they're confused. They're almost under the influence of drugs. They're drugged by their own confusion. If only that confusion were to be removed somehow, if someone talked sense into them, well, all of this could be avoided, and maybe one day let that happen. But that's them. It's much more difficult to equalize ourselves and others, because the logic there is then, I have my right to have happiness equals 1. And everyone else's right to have happiness equals 1. So we are all equally worthy of happiness. But if someone were to say, what's more important, my happiness or the happiness of all the other sentient beings? From the point of view of this equalization, I would have to say, well, I'm 1, and my right to be happy equals 1, let's say, and the right of all the other beings together, put together, their right to be happy is an infinity of ones. All of their ones are in one big pile. So when I compare myself and others, I realize, okay, it actually makes more sense to work for the happiness of everyone, not just for the happiness of this isolated little bubble called me. That's just logical. So then I start doing that, and in doing that, I perform this practice of exchanging self and others. So how does this work? It's a very intricate meditation exercise. It's described in detail in the teachings of Shantideva, but it is psychology at its best. Buddhist psychology at its best. It's a very intricate process. So how do we do it? We decide this body, this speech, and this conventional mind, this bubbling, stream of mental energy that says blah, 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 and generates images and so forth, and comes up with creative ideas and feels emotions. This thingy here will now be a tool. So this, what's traditionally the master, the king, bow to me, all of you, this from now on will be the tool. Traditionally, in terms of our habitual perception, we see this as the king and everyone else as tools for pleasing us. So they all exist to please me. They're here to please me romantically and sexually and in friendly ways, and to laugh at my jokes and to give me money, whatever it is. So the further we are, the more we lack empathy, of course, the more we're going to be perceiving everyone in that manner, as furniture that's only there to fulfill us or to work for us. And of course, through cultivating love and compassion, we kind of move towards that point of equalizing and exchanging. But here we do it in a very radical manner. We say, from now on, this is a tool to serve all sentient beings. And all sentient beings are the king now. They are from now on the king, the Lord, the master, the ultimate object of service. So this is not done out of self-hatred. Way before we enter this stage, we have to cultivate very powerful self-loving kindness and self-compassion. Otherwise, it will be completely ridiculously neurotic, and we will burn out because we do not have that firm foundation. No, it's actually because we have previously trained in lots of loving kindness for ourselves, lots of compassion for ourselves, that we are here able to say, I am doing this practice of exchanging self and others because that is also the ultimate road towards my greatest bliss. That is the only path that can lead me to Buddhahood. And Buddhahood is the ultimate happiness for me personally. The ultimate type of bliss I can experience is the bliss of Buddhahood. And the only way to get there is to go completely beyond my self-centeredness. And this is the way to do this, to exchange. So we do that. And then after we have done that, after we have said these body, speech, and mind, the instrument, everyone else, the ultimate objects of service. After we have done that, we start the practice of giving and taking, or Tonglen proper. And that's where it gains the true force that it's supposed to have. Because it's not simply a nice, comfortable visualization of inhaling some dark smoke, exhaling some white light, and feeling that we've contributed positively to the lives of others. That's still meaningful, but that's like first grade of Tonglen, the first form, the first basic version of it that we can play around with. And this thing with exchanging ourselves and others on the basis of equalizing ourselves and others, and on the basis of having done lots of loving kindness and compassion, this is a very radical form that is what was traditionally the practice of Tonglen, usually kept secret, at least for a few centuries. And then with that, upon this tool, we heap all the suffering of others to let it be transformed. And we, out of this tool, we extract all the happiness and we give it out infinitely to others so that they experience happiness. But of course, it is actually a process of transmutation. We will not be able to actually give away our good karma and actually take upon ourselves the bad karma of others. Only in extremely rare cases, when there's a very powerful connection and an extremely strong force of concentration, can some type of obstacle be taken from usually one great yogi onto another great yogi, from one great yogini onto another great yogini. That's extremely rare. What we are doing is we are transforming our mind, our own mind. That's the primary purpose of this practice. And we're changing overall interdependence of stuff, because through changing ourselves, we change everything. That it's the butterfly effect. And due to that butterfly effect, yes, the hearts of others might become much more open, or a bit more open. And their circumstances might become a bit more favorable, which is why sometimes people feel that someone is doing Tonglen practice for them, or someone is praying for them, or sending them loving kindness, because there is that interdependent connection there that's still palpable. So that's where we finished last time, in covering different aphorisms in the second point on how to do Tonglen practice for cultivating bodhicitta. And then the end of that practice, to actually generate bodhicitta itself, we say, so to actually perform this, to actually bring everyone happiness and remove everyone's suffering, I need to become a Buddha, a fully awakened one. And we rest in that resolve very powerfully. That's conventional bodhicitta itself. So it's not simply loving kindness and compassion, because they need to eventually, towards the end of the practice, resolve into this wish, and we need to rest in it. And once it will become spontaneous, present in our mind at all times, that's when we become actual bodhisattvas. So until then, we're aspiring bodhisattvas, but the moment we have crossed the threshold into bodhicitta being present in our mind 24/7, spontaneously, we see being, for your sake I will become a Buddha, and for your sake I will become a Buddha. And it's not even that coarsely verbal. It's just an underlying resolve that's always there. Once that happens, we are bodhisattvas proper. And then depending on which path we're following, after that, faster or slower, in a more fast or in a more slow manner, we will potentially arrive at succeeding in ultimate bodhicitta as well, we will gain our first non-conceptual glimpse of emptiness. And once we do get that, we will transform from simply bodhisattva into a so-called Arya Bodhisattva, noble bodhisattva. So noble bodhisattvas are beings who, on top of having this bodhicitta, which makes them wish to become a Buddha for the benefit of all beings all the time, on top of that, they have actually gained direct realization of emptiness, direct realization of true nature. And because of the force of two bodhicittas combined, they gain incredible abilities. And then they have to go through 10 different stages, which gradually make their abilities greater and greater. But even on that first level, when they have gained their first true non-conceptual realization of emptiness, that's much better. That's something quite, something much more profound than simply conceptually understanding emptiness, which is still pretty cool. Once they gain that, even on the first level, they're said to gain the ability to manifest 100 bodies at the same time, acting in different parts of space and different worlds for the benefit of all beings, and many other incredible feats. So this is where we become a Marvel Cinematic Universe hero or heroine. You know, right now we might think, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I had 100 bodies to do all the work that I have to do? You know, oof. And at best, which is still pretty amazing, some of us, through training, for example, in dream yoga, which is a very fine art taught in Tibetan Buddhism, can master the art of using our dream body to perform some things. So, for example, sometimes practitioners, and that's shown actually in the first Doctor Strange movie, but that comes from the lore of Tibetan tradition. Some practitioners would do their work during the day and then go to sleep, but use lucid dreaming and dream yoga, their dream body, to continue studying during the night. So they would lay out pages of their texts on the table, because the dream body cannot really go through pages. It cannot turn them, at least not easily. But they would go to sleep, so their physical body is recovering, you know, everything that needs to grow is growing, everything that needs to fall off is falling off. And their dream body gets extracted, goes there and reads those pages. Fortunately, it doesn't need light to read in the dark, because it's described as self-eliminating. But that is not the same as having 100 of those bodies, you know. So bodhisattvas gain those incredible abilities, it's said. And yet, for them, that's just the stuff that they use to benefit others. They're not doing any of it for the sake of having these extraordinary abilities, because by then their mind is always only guided by bodhicitta. So it actually is very rare to meet masters who would even drop a hint that they have realized this. But sometimes it is possible. It is very rare, as I've mentioned before, in the Tibetan tradition and generally in Buddhism. Practitioners are very strongly discouraged from talking about what they have realized openly. And so you would have the most incredible masters saying that they're complete dog shit, literally, that's what they say. And sometimes even worse, in that no qualities, no realizations, no knowledge whatsoever. But then very, very rarely, when there's a need to inspire beings, you would have them very discreetly mention something that is completely mind-blowing. And then you know, because of everything else in their life, that they have no reason to lie about this. As if they wanted to lie, they would start advertising themselves on Instagram, saying, I'm the greatest realized yogi there is. Come to my classes. They do the opposite of that. It's like once in their lifetime, sometimes can you catch that hint. But because they drop that hint because they know the audience that will hear that, sometimes that's like 10 people, sometimes 100 people, 1,000 people, but certainly not the 8 billion people living on this planet. The audience that will catch that and understand the significance of that will be incredibly inspired by knowing, oh yes, it is possible to transform one's mind into bodhicitta. It is possible to cultivate these abilities. It is possible to manifest 100 bodies and more. It is possible to do all of this stuff. And what's most amazing, it is possible to become completely unselfish and at the same time completely blissful because of that unselfishness. So this is what the next section of the text is about. It's about using all the horrible stuff that happens to us as fuel on this path to reaching all of these things. Because otherwise, well, we're still suffering, but nothing good is coming out of it, so what's the point? So, in general, this is not a thought that's limited to the Indo-Tibetan tradition, because the Indo-Tibetan tradition here simply has many special tools for transforming, many specific techniques for transforming suffering into the path. But in general, across all Buddhist traditions, there's this shared idea, to quote Joseph Goldstein, of not letting our suffering go to waste. I think that's actually a very powerful slogan in itself. Do not let your suffering go to waste. And it kind of encompasses everything else that's in this point. But the idea there is, if you're suffering, turn it into compassion, turn it into wisdom, turn it into renunciation, turn it into the understanding of karma, turn it into systems thinking, turn it into empathy. So I was thinking about this the other week, and a wonderful quote that, according to Meryl Streep, comes from Carrie Fisher. So when Meryl Streep was receiving an award, she said, to quote our beloved Princess Leia, "Take your broken heart, turn it into art." So this is once again another summary of this whole point, point 3. Take your broken heart, turn it into art, exactly. Except the art we're studying here, also a craft, because it's quite magical in many ways, just like, you know, witchcraft is described as craft. That's where the word craft is there. We're studying the art and the craft of mind bending. And in this particular case, the attitude bending. That's what Lojong is. So this is a text on attitude bending, bending our attitude. So that's an art. So how do we succeed in that art? By taking suffering, taking our broken-heartedness, our woundedness, our trauma, or trauma, as Jamie Lee Curtis pronounces it, and turning it into art. And that art is the art of compassion and wisdom. That's all there is in Buddhism, really. And concentration. We can also do that. So how do we do that specifically? So the first aphorism here, transforming with our thoughts concerning our behavior. That's just a heading. That's kind of a sort of a footnote in a way. But then the actual aphorism says, when the environment and its dwellers are full of negative forces, transform adverse conditions into a path to enlightenment by banishing one thing, my self-cherishing attitude, as bearing all blame and meditating with great kindness towards everyone. So here Dr. Berzin in our translation combines several lines into just one long sentence, which is a totally valid approach. Quite often we would see that they're divided into several lines, and each line can be taken as a separate point for contemplation. So the first part here, when the environment and its dwellers are full of negative forces. So negative forces here does not mean that there are ghosts flying around or demons, even though from a Buddhist point of view that's not something unreasonable, in that Buddhism, just like Hinduism, just like Christianity, just like Islam, just like Judaism, and just like pretty much every native or aboriginal or indigenous tradition that I know, all of these great contemplative lineages have 100% confidence in the fact that there are more types of beings than simply humans and animals. And that a consciousness, when it leaves, for example, a human body at the end of one life, might be conjoined with other configurations of the 5 elements. And some of those configurations of the 5 elements would not be visible with our human eyes, but would be available to the perception of a realized yogi. And all of that together is what's considered nature in Buddhism, as in like the natural world. It's not limited to humans, animals, plants, birds, bugs, fish, and other scary underwater creatures, you know, many of whom we have not yet met because they live so deep on the bottom of the world ocean. Beyond that, there are specific classes of beings that are invisible to us, but actually even people with a slightly more advanced perception can perceive them. And sometimes we consider those people to be clinically insane, or very seriously mentally ill, whereas what's actually happening is that due to some combination of medical and karmic factors, they have access to just a bit more of what's going on, but because they have no way of figuring it out or controlling their mind while they're perceiving it, their mind goes all over the place. And for us, it seems like they're freaking out, or they're crazy, or they're hearing voices and so forth. Whereas what's actually happening is they're perceiving those subtler planes, but they don't have the format, the structure, the grounding to deal with it all skillfully. Whereas I realized Yogi or Yogini would have access to all of that and way more, but they have the sanity or the stability of the mind to deal with all of it very gracefully, and actually to use that to teach those beings that they perceive while they're also teaching us, and to benefit those beings, and then sometimes to employ those beings for the benefit of all, or to tame them if they're being naughty for some reason, and so on. Many, many things of that nature are known in the Tibetan tradition, just like they're known all over the place. In every lineage, it's just a given that those types of existence are possible. And yes, from a Buddhist point of view, actually there is a direct connection between all these different classes of beings and what's happening in our human world as well, in that sometimes whole nations go crazy. Huge groups of people go crazy. Or a specific area starts suffering from a major epidemic. Or something very wrong starts happening with the natural world, for example, the climate, or the local forest, or local water, and things like that. From a Buddhist point of view, there's a lot of connection to these types of beings. So there is that element of negative forces in that regard, but in general, here it simply means when everyone's going crazy and everything is going crazy. When there's bad stuff happening all around, and specifically when there's bad stuff in the minds of beings, when beings are overwhelmed by their afflictions. So that's the root idea here. So when everything is crazy all around us, and that's exactly what's happening, in our day and age, and I don't know of any other day and age when that wouldn't be necessarily happening. It wasn't much better when the Buddha was walking this earth. It certainly wasn't better when Jesus was alive, Roman Empire, and even in that tiny part of the world, let alone everywhere else. So it's not like we know a specific period in history, between 1650 and 1659, no. Every year there's something new, fun and exciting, happening in that regard. But of course, being extremely focused on ourselves, we always think we live in the worst times, and then we keep forgetting that what we're handing off to the next generation is even worse, because we're also continuing to destroy the environment and all of that. So super awkward. But suffice it to say that we are certainly that condition is certainly fulfilled when the environment and its dwellers are full of negative forces. Okay, so what do I do? I'm right there. Atisha, I'm right there, Geshe Chekova, the authors of this text. Tell me what to do. So they say, transform adverse conditions into a path to enlightenment. Okay. That's a good idea. So sometimes this section, up to this word enlightenment, is considered on its own. And then after that, we go into the next lines. So if we were to do that, the instruction here would be simply, when the environment and its dwellers are full of negative forces, transform adverse conditions into a path to enlightenment. Full stop. Okay. And then in the oral commentary, we would be told something along the following lines. We could do that by transforming all the problems into compassion, right? So let's say I start suffering. Right now I have some physical discomfort in my body, gastritis, all of that kind of jazz. Okay. Can I turn that into compassion? Well, easily. I can even think how many people on this planet are now suffering from stomach discomfort. Oof, a few million, a few 100 million, half them in the population of the planet, But even if I were to start discerning all the other types of suffering that I went through in my life, or even looking at the same physical problem, but seeing how that also can bring about certain psychological anxiety. What is it? Is it going to get worse? Am I ever going to get better? Is it going to kill me? Blah, blah, blah. And then thinking, how many people on this planet right now are afraid or anxious or worried, not sure about what's going to happen tomorrow? Oof. I know how it feels, at least to a certain degree. Yes, my experience with this thing is incomparable to someone who's right now in the Middle East, But it's of the similar nature, just different intensity. So then, extrapolating that, so may we all be free from suffering. That's simply compassion. That's simply a practice of compassion. So I can meditate on that. I can accumulate hours of practice like this on compassion, making that quality super strong in my mind, and along that path also improving my ability to concentrate, because compassion itself can be used as a concentration technique. So I'll get double the benefit. Plus, I've turned my own suffering into something meaningful. And actually, due to how loving kindness and compassion affect our body, it can even have a therapeutic effect on my physical health, or at least on my mental well-being. So I win every which way, and everyone wins, because I emerge a more compassionate person. No one ever said, "Oh, I wish he were less compassionate," you know. "Oh, he's compassionate, horrible," you know. That's not a thing. Well, at least it shouldn't be a thing. I mean, maybe like, you know, in Gestapo, "Oh no, he's too compassionate. He doesn't want to kill those people." That's not good. You know, yes, that is theoretically possible. You know, like the wrong kind of Star Trooper in, you know, the evil galactic empire. Yes, okay, that's bad from that point of view. But we're not, I mean, we are in an empire right now, kind of, you know. Well, many of us are in different empires, but we're not in that empire yet. The emperor has not yet, you know, let's not think about that even. But yeah, we generally probably think, well, it would be wonderful if society consisted of more compassionate people who are kind and empathetic and fun and, you know, and joyful. So let's wish for that. So from that point of view, everyone wins. But also I could use Tonglen here. So I could take all the suffering of others similar to my own, all suffering in general. But it is actually pretty good to start with the one that I'm feeling. So, okay, I have a stomach ache. Like hundreds of millions of people have stomach ache right now. Let me start by taking all of that. Wouldn't that be powerful? You know, amazing. If my suffering could lead to them be freeing from that suffering, what a treat. So I do that, and then I expand that into all the other types of suffering, because this specific type of suffering in the Buddhist worldview came from me previously creating the karma of harming others' bodies. So because I'm not clairvoyant, I don't know what I exactly did to the bodies of others. Was I don't know, punching their stomach somehow? Was I slaughtering them? Was I slaughtering them for food? Was I doing fishing and harming the stomach? You know, it's like there's a billion different things that I could have done to create this karmic seed. Doesn't matter. What matters is that there are multiple other types of physical suffering that can come from similar karmic seeds. So let me take all those karmic seeds from everyone else as well before they ripened. You know, the causes of suffering, not just suffering itself. And my own future physical suffering. I'm taking this in Tonglen practice also from myself in the future. I don't want myself in the future to discover even worse type of physical suffering or stomach pain or something like that. I'll take that on as well right now. Throw it into the fire. Use it as grist for the mill, as Ram Dass used to say. Okay. And then with love, with loving kindness, I'm also giving them peace of mind, healing, a sense of being physically balanced, mentally balanced, peace, everything that's everything that's the opposite of these types of suffering that they're experiencing. Let them get all that. So that's how to use Tonglen for this. But then I could also use it for renunciation. A renunciation in Buddhism means the wish to be free from suffering and the cause of suffering, but for ourselves. So self-compassion is the same as renunciation. Renunciation in Buddhism is not about actually renouncing stuff as in, now I will only wear linen. You know, I will never again wear I'll never go to Zara again. God, Jesus, and Buddha, I promise, I will only wear yoga. I will only wear Lululemons from now on, because that's the ultimate yoga outfit. I will be a yoga renounced person now, and only sleep on my yoga. And it's like, whatever. The levels of grasping in the mind can be the same. So renunciation actually means, one analogy that's often given, realizing that our childhood toys are fun, but they're not that fun. And there are actually greater types of well-being that we can experience. So similarly, saying, yeah, well, life in samsara can be fun until it isn't. Oops. You know, relationships, job, you know, becoming a president, or even being reborn as one of the worldly gods, and then eventually dying there and being reborn as something else. That's all good fun, in a way, if you're into that kind of thing. But, you know, how much longer will I keep playing? Like, how many years can I keep playing Super Mario before it gets old? And this is what we're doing. We are playing Super Mario. You know, your princess is in the other castle. Like, this is samsara. And occasionally, like, we eat the mushroom, we get the star, and then we fall onto some turtle crashes us. You know, it's just literally all that. It's that level of insanity. So I think that's maybe how bodhisattvas see us, because bodhisattvas have woken up to a certain degree. So they're looking at our two-dimensional existence, and it's like this person going like this and being like, oh, that's the next relationship that I'm gonna go into. Yay, you know. And then they laugh. And there's this story about, in some versions, Shariputra, in some versions, another Arhat, also one of the monastic students of the Buddha himself, with a great degree of realization, seeing how in one particular house, the enemy of that family, the enemy of the owner of the house, was reborn as his child, and the mother-in-law died and got reborn as a dog who was trying to steal the fish from the table. And it's like, this is samsara, you know, being reborn into convoluted scenarios and torturing each other and ourselves and being completely oblivious to the whole thing. Being like animals in that we are only following our desire and our aversion. So we bark at some people and then we try to hump other people, quite honestly. That's all we do. And seeing that as a realized being, Shariputra said, or another Arhat in some other versions, what a farce is this samsara? You know, it's ridiculous. It's a telenovela to the umpteenth degree. So working with that, renunciation here would be to say, yes, I do have stomachache right now, and only 2 people came to my class. How the hell is that? Well, that's samsara, baby, is what the Buddha is saying. That's samsara. Did you expect? What did you expect? You know, what did you expect? And then I have to humbly say, why? Well, yeah, you know, I didn't want it to be any different, which of course I did, you know, it's like, let's be honest. But I have to say, well, good lesson. And it's not like the Buddha sent me that lesson. The Buddha does not control reality in that regard, but just reality itself, as it's sometimes described, combined and brought me this experience. And this experience is a good slap in the face, reminding me that samsara hurts. So remember, in the very beginning, we talked about the concepts of happiness and suffering. So the concept of suffering in Buddhism is referred to as dukkha. And also, that's a common term with Hindu. It's just a common Indic term, common term in the Indian subcontinent. But the etymology of it is that dukkha is either bad space, or in a more specific interpretation, in a more particular interpretation, like it's a very specific thing. It's not simply space in general in which things are not flowing as they should. That's the first interpretation. Everything should flow smoothly. You know, there should be like this Tao-like movement of harmony, where everything is harmoniously organized, the seasons interchange, you know, it's like nice, smooth flow of everything. Instead of that, we get like this bumpy ride where everything is horrible. So the most specific interpretation is that dukkha refers to the badly made hole in the center of a wheel. And because that hole is made badly, it's not, you know, polished and it's not nice, the ride of that with that wheel is extremely bumpy. So we are quite literally on the wheel. That's a nightmare wheel. So we go into Disneyland, or we go to the London Eye here. I will never get on that thing because I'm afraid of heights, quite honestly. But also, it's just you know, like every time I tried one of those, it gave people good laughs. They really laughed. They really laughed at my misery, and there are pictures of me desperately holding on to, you know, the central pole of the booth or whatever it is. But let's imagine we are an excited tourist. We go to that. We go to the London Eye. We get on it, but instead of the smooth ride that everyone else gets, and it seems to move pretty smoothly. Let's be honest. We get like a hell of a ride. Something malfunctions, and then it's like all over the place. Goes back, it tries throwing us, you know, like riding a bull, a mechanical bull. And suddenly it's not fun anymore. And we're like, it's not fun anymore. And then the Buddha from the ground says, well, I told you so. Hello, I told you that samsara is dukkha. The first noble truth is there is dukkha, and that dukkha has causes. So until you eliminate causes from your mind, you will keep getting that dukkha. When you remove the causes by using the prescribed procedures, then you'll experience freedom, which is equal to happiness, sukha, the good type of will that turns smoothly. So whenever we feel any type of suffering, we can say, that's what I get for being in samsara. If I don't like this, I need to get out of samsara. How do I do that? I need to train into bodhicittas. And quite frankly, how many hours did I train into bodhicittas today? How much time did I invest into that? How much time did I spend practicing ethics, concentration, and wisdom today, the three fundamental practices of Buddhism? How much time did I spend meditating on relative bodhicitta, which includes loving kindness, compassion, tonglen, all of that? How much time did I spend meditating on emptiness? Well, 0 time most of the time, or 15 minutes. And then I have to say, well, what do I expect for 15 minutes, Practice for 15 minutes, I got the benefit that 15 minutes can bring. But if I want to become free, like those great yogis, like Milarepa, who got full realization in one life after killing a bunch of people with black magic and then having a complete change of heart, well, then I need to practice like Milarepa. And yes, there are more moderate scenarios. There are other strategies. There are multiple role models on the path, and I can emulate any of those role models, whichever one speaks to me. But one thing in common to all of them is that they really took their practice seriously. And that's not what seems to happen right now. So now that I'm suddenly experiencing mild discomfort in my abdominal area, maybe that's a wake-up call. That's me talking to myself right now. But that's kind of the logic that we use. And then we concentrate on that resolve. Okay, I'll do my best to liberate my mind. And through that, benefit others. So that's renunciation. Then another approach is to think of karma, which is, of course, a very big thing here. So any type of suffering we experience, we can only experience, that's one of the fundamental principles of karma in Buddhism. We can only experience suffering if we created the cause for that suffering. And that cause had necessarily had to be an intention that was combined with afflictive mental states, and that was quite often enacted. So karma is created by intentions. If it was just a passing intention that we played with but we didn't really enact, that would leave a relatively weak karmic seed. But if we got the intention and it was combined with powerful neurotic desire or powerful anger or hatred, or powerful confusion, for example, we thought that sacrificing animals would bring happiness to ourselves and others. That's a confused mental. Or we thought that killing other ethnic groups is a great thing to do. That's confusion. Or conceit or jealousy, one of those. A powerful afflictive mental state, powerful negative emotion or negative belief, plus the powerful intention, plus then we did all of it, and then we celebrated it all on top of that, that would create a very, very powerful karma. So depending on how powerful the seed is, the ripening would be equally weak or strong. So now we're experiencing maybe super powerful suffering, or maybe super weak suffering, depending on like mild discomfort. I know one time I was in Amsterdam with 2 friends, and we bought an umbrella because it's rainy in Amsterdam and worse than in London. So we opened that umbrella, and then that top part broke off and flew away. So we just witnessed it flying away along the canals and just disappearing in the distance, and we never saw it again. It went on a trip. It was a very mild type of suffering, to be honest, because it was kind of inconvenient to, yes, get wet and have to go back and buy another umbrella, hopefully more structurally strong one. But it was also kind of hilarious. So very weak negative karmic seed, probably combined with some relatively good karmic seed that made us all laugh and enjoy the situation, ripened as this very moderate type of suffering, combined with quite a lot of pleasure. Just because it's so hilarious, so ridiculous. Oh, and on top of that, what I actually remember now is that it happened a second after I told of a similar story that someone told me about before. So it's like, this friend of mine, she once bought an umbrella, opened it, it broke off and flew away. And then a second later, we do that and the exact same thing happens. So just through synchronicity, all of that, and, well, the ridiculousness of it all, we did not suffer that much. But, you know, we can suffer in similar circumstances when it's not funny, you know, getting completely wet and miserable when you already have a fever, and then having to remain wet for 4 hours and getting even more sick as a result of that. That's suffering on top of suffering on top of suffering. But then on top of that, you know, also being broken up with, and then your relative dies, and then there's 32 wars going on this planet. So it's just like compounded suffering can be infinitely strong. But all of that can be transformed into a profound understanding of karma, because we think every single thing in the sequence of events arose out of a specific karmic seed. How fascinating. But what's the one thing that I know? If I do not want to suffer, I need to be careful from now on to create positive karmic seeds and to avoid creating negative karmic seeds, and also to purify the negative karmic seeds. That's actually covered in this section as well. Purification. Okay, pretty cool. So these are 4 major approaches, and compassion. The approach of compassion is completely secular. It can be taught to anyone. So anyone, when they suffer, can turn that suffering into greater compassion, or empathy, which is a precursor to compassion, just seeing the feelings of others as valid and understanding them. Same with loving kindness. It can be another thing. When we suffer, but then we say, hey, well, may everyone be happy, including me. We all want, let's say I'm now suffering from loneliness, for example, for a moment, you know, so having a very strong mood of loneliness, you know, not quite pleasant, not a very good thing to have, as opposed to solitude, which is often described as a positive state or constructive. So drowning in loneliness and then thinking, well, may every being feel connected and loved. Sending that wish powerfully into the universe. That's loving kindness, practice of loving kindness, a form of it. That's a very good way to transform my suffering into some. Or if I'm sick, may everyone be healthy. Garchen Rinpoche was one of the greatest yogis of our time. When the COVID pandemic started, suggested that everyone recite a beautiful verse from Shantideva's dedication chapter. May every being ailing with disease be freed at once from every malady. May all the sickness that affects the living be instantly and permanently healed. So you can find it on, I'll add it to our materials for our course in general, but also you can find it on Garchen Rinpoche's website. And he said that making that wish is one of the most powerful healing practices in general. Yes, there are practices with mantras and visualizations and different mudras and so forth, yogic practices, breathing practices. Those are powerful. Not to mention Tibetan medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, regular medicine as we know it, you know, many, many sources of healing in this world. But simply wishing for everyone to be healthy and healed transforms the karmic field within which we all exist, the interdependence of threads. It regulates the threads, rewires them, reweaves them into something good. So even that can be a very powerful healing thing. So we notice ourselves suffering from any sort of disease, and then we start reciting an aspiration of that nature. May everyone be healthy. We can recite the whole verse, of course. It's blessed because it's Shantideva's words, but even simply saying, may everyone be healthy. Without expectation that it will heal us necessarily, that's kind of a shooting ourselves in the leg, sitting there and hoping, oh, I'm wishing for everyone to be healthy. Why am I not feeling better yet, you know? We might get better if there's karmic conditions for that, and we might not. But if we meditate like that, we will receive incredible benefit either way. So super good to do that. And then that's the first part. So there are many, many other things that could be done. And there's another mind training text by the third Dodrupchen Rinpoche on transforming adversity and felicity into the path to awakening. And that can be studied separately. And that one focuses on just transforming suffering into the path, whereas this text covers a whole bunch of other things. But that text presents many more techniques. And I like to think of that text as sort of a flower, which within... So you have left these petals, and you can pick whichever petal inspires you in a specific moment and work with that. Suffering past, you put the petal back. Next time you suffer, you take another petal or the same one. You work with it a bit more. Renunciation, or bodhicitta, or wisdom, or compassion, or loving kindness, or karma, you know. How will I transform my mind today? And each thing will strengthen your practice overall. And there's a commentary to that text by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, which was the first book on attitude training or attitude bending that I myself read. I think I narrated that story before. I was in college. I had an oral examination that I thought was not particularly just, in that I got a B. Oh, heartbreak, the suffering. Little did I know. That should have been my biggest problem, but it was not, sadly. But little did I know, so crestfallen, going home, and it was on my, just to give you the idea of how privileged I was, I had a Palm PC. It was before the smartphones, but I had a Palm computer with a dictionary, which was very helpful because it was training as a translator and things like that. But also on it, I had that book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, so I started reading it. I was mind blown by these teachings of attitude bending, because someone suddenly told me, you are free to choose whether you suffer as a result of injustice or not. And that's only good advice when we feel that way. Because if I were to go to a marginalized community and say, oh, why are you suffering, guys? Well, it's all in your mind, I don't think it's good for you to think that, whatever oppression you're facing, you just transform your attitude. It's like, oh my God, what a tone-deaf thing to do. Spiritual bypassing at its best. No. But if someone from a marginalized community thinks that a tool like that is valuable and uses it and receives the benefit, then when it's appropriate. So the teachings should all be there, but no one should be forcing them down our throat, because equally, let's say you suffer from heartbreak, you've just left a relationship or something like that, and your friend, instead of simply compassionately listening to you and providing the shoulder and crying with you if necessary, making you tea, whatever needs to, helping you pack the bags and move them, boom, boom, boom. Instead of doing that, they start lecturing you about karma and or telling you that you ruined it all because you didn't go to therapy, like when she told you to go to therapy. It was like, oof, it's like, yes, you might be right, but what a tone-deaf thing to do. So the same with these teachings. They work when we ourselves feel mature enough to apply them. And they do not in any way negate the necessity to transform the outer fabric of society, where we can work with oppression and things like that, hopefully. So the next thing here is, by banishing one thing, my self-cherishing attitude, as burying all blame. So as you can see, my self-cherishing attitude is here in square brackets. And it's added here mainly based on Gelugpa commentaries. So in some other commentaries, you would instead see that this one thing to be blamed is self-grasping. But in general, it's true either way. Either interpretation is correct. What's the difference? In general, in Lojong teachings, which is what we're studying, all of Lojong teachings, all of the teachings of this genre, and it's incredibly varied and rich. There are many texts, and some of them are quintessential, like this one. Everyone studies this, more or less, in the Tibetan tradition. But some are more recent, some are more ancient, some were written in India, some in Tibet. There's volumes upon volumes of Lojong texts. But the most essential ones are collected in a collection literally called Mind Training, brilliantly translated by Thupten Jinpa. It's a very nice volume in a collection of volumes which present the greatest treasures of Tibetan literature. So one volume is specifically on Lojong, on mind training. And in general, in all these teachings on mind training, it's always said that on the path to awakening, we have only one task. Yes, we need to cultivate the two bodhicittas, and there are stages of these bodhisattva practices, as I have mentioned. So bodhisattvas can go through those 10 stages after they've reached the first non-conceptual state of being recognizing emptiness, yada, yada, yada. But a more simple way to put it all is to say, we will become a Buddha when we fully remove the two enemies, or the twofold enemy of self-grasping and self-cherishing, Dakdzin and Dakchedzin in Tibetan. So what are these two states, self-grasping and self-cherishing? Self-cherishing is also sometimes translated as self-centeredness or even selfishness, not to be confused with self-compassion and self-loving kindness. These are constructive mental states. So self-cherishing is, and this is a very appropriate metaphor, I guess, in the UK, because the UK has a royal system to this day, This is an analogy with a king and his minister. So self-cherishing is a minister, and self-grasping is the king. So self-grasping, of course, as the king, is the main person there. And self-cherishing is just aiding that self-grasping. But as we know from Aladdin, a bad prime minister like Jafar can be really a pain in the ass. So self-cherishing is actually a pain in the ass, not just for ourselves, but for everyone else. Because self-cherishing, how is it defined? It is a mental state that makes us believe that our happiness is more important than the happiness of everyone else or anyone else. So this instinctual belief that my happiness is more important than the happiness of anyone else, that my pain is more painful than the pain of anyone else, that my yoga path is more important than the yoga path of anyone else. I should be the first one to gain enlightenment, not to aid others, not for their sake, which would be the very healthy option from a Buddhist point of view, completely valid. No, I need to be the first one to reach enlightenment because I'm me, and everyone deserves to see that, you know? So I do want to become like Milarepa or all these great yogis. I do want to dissolve my body into rainbow light, which is one of the ultimate achievements in yogic practice in Buddhism. Very, very hard thing to do, but not undoable. I do want to do that. But then someone asks, well, why? What's your motivation? And I say, well, because then those cool bullies will finally see, you know, or everyone will see. They didn't see how great I was. I only had 100 subscribers on Instagram, 100 followers on Instagram, because the world failed to see my greatness. And now they will, because I'll be the ultimate yogi. So things like that, they're embarrassing to notice in our minds. Whatever permutation of that arises, it's all very individual, but also very completely recognizable for many of us. Whatever it is, this I am me and the world deserves to see that. Or another thing that people have is like, when I'll die, when I die, you will all regret it, or whatever. You know, when I leave, you'll regret not having me in this company because I was such an important part, you know, whatever. We delusions of grandeur in a way, but also simply, this is from the life of Saint Therese of Lisieux, a Catholic saint who was very, very naturally gifted in terms of thinking of compassion and altruism, and then put that into the framework of her Catholic practice. But one time when she was a girl, she got 2 sugar rings as a treat, which I guess in the early 20th century was a treat, a ring made of sugar, okay. It's now we think, oh my goodness, you know, sugar ring, you know, but that was a treat back then, okay. So she was carrying them, and then I think she dropped one of them, and then she said, oh no, my poor sister, her sugar ring just got lost. And then she caught herself, and she thought, well, why did I think it was hers and not mine that I dropped? Why was my first thought to think I dropped my sister's ring and ruined it instead of mine? But that is self-cherishing. The first thought is the thought of ourselves, and we can think validly to a certain point that there is an evolutionary component to it. Yes, that's true. Our body in particular, when it experiences the fear of being killed and so on, all these evolutionary signals that it has in terms of survival, procreation, yes, from that point of view, there is that animalistic pull that makes our body want to procreate, or, you know, all these sorts of things. But our mind plays a huge role on top of just simply the evolutionary level. It adds a lot on top of that. And of course, it also has the power to completely supersede those fundamental animalistic signals, because there are practitioners who have completely overridden that program of self-cherishing and completely transformed their mind into the opposite of that, which is conventional bodhicitta, which is that practice of exchanging self and others. So in that exchanging self and others, where we say this thing here is now the tool, you know, this thing here is the tool, and everyone else is the queen, the lord, the master, the object of service. When we say that, we work directly against self-cherishing, this thing that says, no, me first. And self-grasping is a form of ignorance, Dagdzin, grasping at a self, or grasping at an identity, grasping at an I, or even grasping at any kind of selfhood, which sometimes is extended to mean grasping at the identity of phenomena or things around us, where we think, oh, this meditation bowl, it has its own essence. This table here, it has its own essence. This bag, it has its own essence. Yes, that is also grasping at an identity of things. But the primary one meant in Lojong teachings is us grasping at the self within ourselves, myself, me, this bubble of a being, which is from a Buddhist point of view where the belief in a self comes from. So all the elaborate philosophical presentations about a soul or an inherent self like an Atman defined as unchangingly blissful, eternal, and unitary, not broken. It does not consist of parts. From a Buddhist point of view, these are just philosophical elaborations on top of this fundamental instinct to think that there is something findable within here. And if someone were to find it, it would be definitely Lobsang. It will be recognizably this very person. And it would be somehow different from everyone else. And if were I to find it, I'd be like, oh, that's the true me. Which is where our whole language of saying, just be true to yourself, comes from. Which is a very intricate thing then when we work with it with the Buddhist tools, because on the one hand, being true to oneself can simply mean do not cave into capitalist propaganda of productivity, give yourself some rest, be self-compassionate, have some loving kindness for yourself. Absolutely valid things without which we will honestly not survive. But it can also mean, yes, do believe that there is a fixed entity within you. Do believe that you're incapable of change. Do tell everyone you're like this because you're a Scorpio, And then we say, yes, master, I am a Scorpio, I cannot change. That's the true me. Deal with it, And then that's where problems start. So this idea can be both poisonous and healing. It's just what we put into it. So what we are invited to put in here is to think that it's this creative duo, this power couple of self-grasping at self-cherishing that ruins everything in the universe for everyone involved. And in particular for me, my suffering, all my negative karma was created under the influence of self-cherishing and self-grasping. Why did I in my past lives kill other beings? Because when I did it consciously, not accidentally stepping on an ant. There's no karma if there's no recognition that something happens. If you don't know that you stepped on an ant, all the key elements of karma are missing. The result is there. The ant is dead, but it was not there was no intention, so there's no karma. But when I do it consciously for some reason, as some children do because of a child, that kind of strange cruelty that children have initially, some children are completely averse to that. But some children, they catch dragonflies and they blow them up. I've seen that happen in summer camps, blowing them up with little rockets and doing all sorts of weird things, removing wings from flies and all that kind of. Why is that happening? Well, because there's a recognition of this me here and the fact that I want this and my desires are more important than whatever that fly might feel, My curiosity about what will happen if I remove its wings is more important than whatever that stupid fly might be feeling. There's also anthropocentricity there, in that we think humans are more important than animals, and that's a whole other thing. But in general, we treat humans the same way then. We grow up to think, okay, well, my desires are more important than anyone else's. And we project that every which way. So then we become tyrants if we also have the power to have political influence and things like that. We just treat everyone as chess pieces on our insane little chess board. So really scary, and that's all self-grasping. Truly believing that I exist, I'm in the center of the universe, and my desires are more important. That's what self-grasping and self-cherishing do together. So all negative karma comes from it. That means all my negative experiences that are the result of negative karma come from it. So my stomachache right now comes from my negative karma. Where did that negative karma come from? Who did this? Who created it? well, kind of I did, but there's no fixed I. So it was created somewhere by lots of mental impulses and mental states within my flow of being in the past. Intentions combined with recognition, combined with anger or desire or whatever, and that whole mess happened. But who was the culprit, the ultimate thing pulling the strings in a way, sort of? What was the vital point that if it were to be pierced, none of this would have happened? That vital point, that ultimate culprit, was the union of self-cherishing and self-grasping. So then in some traditional commentaries on this text, that's common to both the commentary by Sechel Buva and the commentary by Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, which is one of the most popular English language books on this whole text of the 7-point mind training. There's the analogy of saying, well, when people think their house is haunted, which I think is also not that uncommon in the UK as well, you know. It was common in Tibet sometimes, or it's common in the Himalayan region actually, but it's common everywhere. When His Holiness the Dalai Lama sometimes used to travel because that his age permitted him to do that at that point. One time he was in a hotel somewhere in the West, and they put him in a room which they believed was haunted because they were curious what will happen. So what happened was that after he stayed there, there was no more haunting, you know, no more scary sounds or whatever. And then he said, well, I just meditate on love and compassion there. So it all went away. So I guess that was enough for that interdependence to change. But if we believed that there is an actual, I don't know, presence in our house, and we hear strange noises during the night, and we wake up and we cannot move, or parallel, you know, all these sorts of things that we associate with haunting, and that might be it as well, who knows. But when we have that, we do eventually seek out exorcism. You know, we think it was like, let me burn some sage, or invite a yogi or a shaman or whatever. We do stuff to change that. But here, we have found and identified decisively, definitively, the ultimate demon that is the source of all the suffering in the universe for every which being. The beings that are involved in those 32 wars that are happening right now, why are they, especially the beings who run the wars, who organize them, who push for them, who make those decisions, who send rockets, who are at the top strategically making those decisions, why are they doing it? Yes, some of them have strange beliefs about how that's going to bring them to heaven and things like that, some very convoluted and problematic mental states that are absolutely out of touch with reality. Or sometimes just believing in the fact or in the idea that your clan is more important than all these other clans, or that your clan deserves to own all this land or all this oil, which is at the root of many things, you know, all of those sorts of things. But then what's deeper? Go deeper, deeper, deeper. What's there at the very core? The self-cherishing and self-grasping. I exist, and my happiness comes first. Or maybe the happiness of my family and my clan and my country and my government. But we all exist, definitely. That feeling is there. So actually, when meditations on emptiness are done, there is one practice in which it's said, imagine that you've been accused of stealing. Or remember a moment in which you were unjustly accused of something. You know, someone says, did you just fart? I think you just, you know, and you know definitively they did it. Or someone else did it. But the embarrassment, our whole body goes into cardiac arrest, you know, depending on how sensitive we are. But here in this culture, I think actually it's quite, because there are some cultures which don't care about, you know, saving the face and things like that. But in the UK, people generally try to have good deportment. You know, there are exceptions, but people more or less are still following the general rules of politeness compared to some other places that I've been to. No, never mind. Anyhow, and then someone accuses you. You're trying to be polite, you're trying to behave, you're trying to do your best, and then someone accuses you of something completely ridiculous. And just that instinctive reaction, oh, this self got accused unjustly. I did not do it. So the feeling of the self emerges very powerfully. So it said, remember that, or actually try to evoke that in yourself, and then look at that self very, very directly. And you will see, if you use the power of insight meditation, that self does not exist in the way that it seemed to. There's actually nothing there. You look for it, but there's no bubble of a being that could be findable there. It all falls back into pieces. Here's intention, here's discrimination, here's feeling, here's mental formations, here's consciousness, here's the body. But where is that self, the ultimate master of it all? Unfindable. Or within thoughts. This is a thought of a self, and this is another thought of a self, and this is an emotion, and this is a mental image. But where's the self that is not a thought? That's more than a thought, because it feels to us that the self is more than simply passing thought. If it was simply a passing thought, how is the passing thought, I am me, any more important than the passing thought of, please pass the pie? Well, it's not. We only believe that it is. That's what we can discover through pointing the laser of our insight practice towards that. And it's also said, also you can imagine that you just won the Nobel Prize, and feeling elated and proud about yourself could also serve as a powerful situation in which that self is identifiable. So when we find ourselves in these situations, someone, and some teachers do that when they're kind of skillful with this. Some teachers, if you have a direct contact with them and they are seeing that you might benefit from such advice, they might poke you in just tiny ways. Some teachers would even poke you in big ways, but it's quite uncommon in this day and age because it requires a very personal contact. But some teachers might poke you in very small ways, and triggering, therefore, these reactions. Oh, I cannot believe that Joan got an audience that's 15 minutes and I only got 8, something like that. Whatever, the tiniest poke. Oh, the teacher looked at them for 2 minutes long. The teacher answered their question at not, or whatever it is. Actually, it might be unintentional, it might be intentional, but in either case, something gets poked. And that's where we can say, there's that self-grasping and there's self-cherishing. I thought my audience should be longer and not Joan's. That's self-cherishing. And I thought about this self in general. There's some kind of self that I'm thinking about. What is this? That's self-grasping. So putting the blame on it and working against it with the power of two bodhicittas. So by banishing one thing, my self-cherishing attitude is bearing all blame, and then meditating with great kindness towards everyone. That's one translation of it. And the other translation is meditating on the great kindness of everyone. So meditating with great kindness towards everyone means that we realize that self-grasping and self-cherishing are to blame, and then we practice very powerful loving kindness towards everyone. That's obviously an antidote to self-cherishing, and it's also partly an antidote to self-grasping as well. Especially when Garchen Rinpoche teaches loving kindness and compassion, he sometimes uses the formula of... So the basic formula for loving kindness is to think, may all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness, or even may all beings be happy. That's the basic formula. But Garchen Rinpoche here offers something much more specific and much closer to this teaching of Lojong. He says, think, may all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness, which is love. And love here does not simply mean loving kindness, it means cherishing others, which is the opposite of self-cherishing. So, may all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness, which is love, meaning cherishing everyone, as opposed to just cherishing this one simple self. And then for compassion, the basic formula for compassion is to wish, may all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. And as I've mentioned, we trained in that in stages. We start with ourselves or with a suffering being, we go through many different objects and eventually it becomes truly expansive. But eventually we arrive at may all beings be free from suffering and its causes. But Garchen Rinpoche here says, and of course yogi, an ultimate level yogi, who's still alive in this world, such a blessing, to know that such beings are still around and praying for peace, amongst other things, and teaching us how to be peaceful, how to live in peace. So he says here, may all beings be free from suffering, so this is the same formula, and the cause of suffering, which is self-grasping. So instead of allowing our mind to flail around in trying to figure out what is the cause of happiness, what is the cause of suffering, which is what traditionally we are allowed to do in these meditations. The Buddha, when he teaches these practices, does give us lots of space to think initially, oh, maybe the cause of happiness is a good marriage, a good family, a good career, a lot of money, or maybe some spiritual practice, maybe some yoga, maybe some meditation, and then eventually we realize, oh, ultimately the cause of happiness is, enlightenment or all the positive mental states. If they're absent, no happiness will follow whatsoever. If they're there, good karma will be created, happiness will be experienced, and eventually enlightenment will be gained. So that's kind of, the Buddha gives us lots of time to arrive at that realization on our own. And the same with the causes of suffering. We first think, what are the causes of suffering? Well, encountering unpleasant people, that's one. Bad weather, not having enough money in the bank, yada, yada, yada. And then it gets more and more and more complex as we cultivate our understanding. But here Garchen Rinpoche says, well, we don't have much time, guys. The planet is almost dead. Let's go straight to business. What's that business? Male beings have love and the cause of love. Oh, sorry. Male beings have happiness and the cause of the happiness, which is love. Male beings be free from suffering and the cause of that suffering, which is self-grasping. It's a very powerful way to practice with this. Practice this entire point that we've covered so far. And if we read this line as meditating on the great kindness of everyone, then we are invited to do meditations on the kindness of all beings. That is an actual meditation practice. So there are 3 ways of doing it. I'll just describe them and we'll conclude on that. So strategy number 1 is to think of past lives. And it is valid from a Buddhist point of view that in past lives, because we've had an infinite number of them, every being that there is, and there's an infinity of them, has at some point been our mother and our father and our sibling and our beloved partner and our child. And all of them have done that thousands of times, incountable number of times. But because we've been put in different configurations with everyone, amongst those configurations, every being has at some point been infinitely kind to us. Literally the kindest, most loving mother to us, that saved us multiple times and loved us and fed us and bathed us and took us through our entire life, yada, yada, yada. Or the most loving, incredible, supportive partner, or the most grateful, supportive child. They've done all of that. And now, some of them are still supporting us. They're smiling at us and hugging us and all that. And some of them are harming us. They hate us. They want us dead. But what happened? They've fallen under the influence of their afflictive mental states. They're drugged. They're drugged out of their minds. They're confused. They're asleep. They're zombies. They're zombified by their delusions, by their afflictions. And I can't unzombify them yet. It's kind of a Walking Dead scenario or something. There is this strange fascination with zombie shows in our modern culture. It's lots of research on why are we obsessed with zombies? Why so many shows on that? Well, we are all like zombies in a way, as long as we're confused. Bodhisattvas are the ones who emerged from that zombification to help others. But we're zombified ourselves right now, yet we see how, what is this? Everyone is like a zombie. May I unzombify myself, become a Buddha as soon as possible, and then I'll be able to unzombify everyone else. Because it's heartbreaking that these beings who were so kind to me are now in this confused state. So thinking of these past lives and how they were all our mothers and fathers is strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 is meditating on the kindness of everyone in terms of interdependence. So the socks that I'm wearing, the jeans that I'm wearing, the body that I have with all of its DNA and cells, all the knowledge in my mind, the languages that I know, although barely, and the things I know about Buddhism, although not that much, and the things I know about even how to live in this life, which buttons to press on this computer, and the existence of this computer, and Zoom, which someone has developed, and all of the other things that I have, it all came through the work of all the sentient beings together. Yes, to create this computer, some beings worked in a more immediate way, and an ammonite that was alive, or some other, like a turtle that was alive billions of years ago, did not personally participate in this creation, in creation of this computer model, but because it was alive back then and somehow participated in the overall dance of things in the universe, it was also implicated in all of it. Not to mention all the plastic that we're having right now. How many sentient beings transformed into black oil through a very, very complex process of what was happening underground until eventually it all emerged, you know. So all of these sorts of things, thinking how, in a way, everything, that's one statement that is not incorrect in Buddhism, everything that preceded the creation of a specific material object served as a direct or indirect cause for its existence. So everything, in a way, until I was born, was serving as either a direct cause for my birth, and the direct cause for my birth was the combination of the father's sperm and the mother's egg, or an indirect cause for my birth. How would these two substances have come together if it wasn't for everyone else that happened before that? So Elizabeth I was not directly contributing, but she was part of the overall fabric of existence. And were she not to exist there as the Queen of England at some point, life in the 20th century would have been very different, the butterfly effect. And my parents would not have met, and I would not have arisen. So that goes for everything. So everyone contributes to everything. And sometimes they contribute by sacrificing their lives. How many insects die when rice is collected? And then, you know, when juice is squeezed out of apples. Best not to think about it, by the way, that part, because apparently there's lots of rats running around those apples when they get squished and the juice flows out. But in a way that just shows us that, yes, it is best to have a vegetarian or a vegan diet from many points of view, if possible, if available, and without arrogance on top of that, you know, so like lots of considerations there. But nothing is free of some type of sacrifice, and the best we can do is then project kindness and appreciation towards everyone involved. So then we think, okay, everyone in the fabric of reality contributed to even the smallest type of joy that I have. So I'll try to repay that kindness by unzombifying myself, becoming a Buddha, and bringing them all to happiness. And right now I'm sending them happiness, sending them loving kindness already. May they all be happy and have the cause of happiness, which is love. And then the third strategy, thinking of sentient beings specifically as our trainers in sanity, in being sane. Sane as in like in the Buddhist from a Buddhist point of view. Sane in that we see the interdependence of things and the absence of independence. So how do we do that? In general, it is correct from the Buddhist point of view to say that suffering arises because reality responds to our attempts at contraction. We try to contract our sense of selfhood. We try to contract our bubble of privilege. We try to contract and hold on to stuff. And the reality says, no, that's not how it works. And it starts pulling back. The more we resist, the more we suffer. Buddhists do not resist at all. Therefore, they are equal to reality itself. Their awareness is boundless. They never suffer. They are in endless bliss. But they see that we suffer. Why do we suffer? Because we feel that we're these isolated bubbles. Even if we don't go into any other type of thing, simply thinking about the suffering of loneliness. What's the difference between me feeling sad and drowning in self-pity and feeling, oh, I'm all alone, you know, which happens, and Milarepa, joyfully laughing in his cave, hadn't seen a being for years, didn't see a being for years at some stages of his training. And then like gods and goddesses start coming and asking for his teachings. But before that, wasn't quite going into central London to hang out, you know, for a pint. It was not what he was doing. So what's the difference there? And even now, there are plenty of yogis and yoginis in solitary retreat in this world. What's the difference between them, their minds, infinitely blissful in that little cave, and the mind of someone who is in solitary confinement, which is considered to be such a type of torture that it's banned in multiple countries, locking someone up for multiple days at an end. So for some, the greatest prize, a privilege, the permission to go into solitary retreat in a monastery is very hard to get because the monastery needs its working bees, you know, so to isolate yourself and meditate for 3 years, it's quite a privilege, quite a prize. And someone dreading being sent into another solitary confinement, killing themselves there because the torture that the mind there is giving them is unbearable. What's the difference between the two? The mind of someone who's suffering from loneliness is contracted. And it's contracting so much that every thought becomes source of torture. It becomes torturous, becomes painful. And it's tortured by multiple negative mental states. And all of those mental negative states come from self-grasping. And self-grasping is simply a form of contraction, contracting around a sense of identity, sense of selfhood. The more we overcome that sense of identity, that sense of selfhood, the more we become blissful. So a yogi or a yogini in a cave experience greater and greater degrees of being congruent with the entirety of reality, being connected to all of reality. And the more they feel connected to the entirety of reality, there's less loneliness there is. How can there be loneliness when you at least feel connected to everyone? It's the circle of life kind of thing. And then on top of that, how can you feel lonely when you actually are able to perceive the thoughts of beings and you can know what's happening to them at deeper levels of spiritual progress, which is what true masters gain. They know our minds from within. Through our they abide in their Buddha nature. So through our Buddha nature, as if we had a shared root system, they look into our minds and they see how confused and miserable we are. But because they look through the lens of the Buddha nature, they're not disgusted by us. Ew, what is this gross little thing? They see our amazing potential and then all the confusion on top of it, which is the only thing we see. We do not see the Buddha nature, we just see the confusion. So then what would lead me to seeing my Buddha nature if I'm stuck in my confusion? If I literally, like Mario on the screen, can only see that I can move left and right, jump on turtles, catch the mushroom, get into the castle, no, Mario, your princess is in the next castle, and then all over again. The only thing that can start dragging me out of this is when beings come to my aid and kindly harm me. They come to my aid and they challenge my illusions. They challenge my bubble of reality. How do they do that? By breaking my heart, by being mean to me, spitting into my face, or, the same thing happens with the quote-unquote, what do we call that? Unsanctioned phenomena, things like weather. It's not like from a Buddhist point of view, sometimes gods and goddesses can affect that, but I highly doubt that they're very busy controlling weather over central London. It's probably not the most interesting thing for them to do, even though they could just be blissing out all day long, until they also pass away and got reborn as something else. But, so the weather is not necessarily controlled by anyone in particular, but even the weather can slap my face so hard I will wake up a little bit, Oh, it's the 60th gloomy day here in London. What does it remind me about? That samsara is dukkha. If I don't want dukkha, I need to progress towards happiness. What's the cause of happiness? Love. What's the cause of dukkha? Self-grasping. I'm only in this horrible weather because of self-grasping. Let me do something about it. So that's where we start working. And then, therefore, in this case, thinking of the kindness of beings can in particular pertain to thinking. And that's a very powerful and radical thing to do. We do not need to do it until we're ready. But thinking, this person, conventionally speaking, abused me. Conventionally speaking, abuse absolutely does exist. It has its own defining characteristics. It has a specific effect on our mental health, can destroy our self-esteem. There are many things that happen. Just like conventionally speaking and legally speaking, there is homicide, there is theft. There are all these bad things. Conventionally speaking, they're absolutely bad. No one likes to be killed. No one likes to be stolen from. That's true for animals and humans and most other beings. So conventionally speaking, once again, abuse, and I'm talking about like narcissistic or, psychopathic or sociopathic abuse. That exists. Verbal abuse also exists. Or fat shaming, skinny shaming, something seemingly more simple. Those things do exist and they have a negative effect on our mind. But then, when we feel that maturity within ourselves, the resources to do that, we can say, this is where I can choose for my own sanity to see that what this person did under the influence of their confusion, and actually I can never definitively prove that they were not simply a magical manifestation of a Buddha that played that role to help me break through my mental blocks, look beyond my bubble of privilege. I can never definitely prove that it wasn't the case. But even they are simply a confused sentient being just like me, deluded, and they will probably suffer. They will definitely suffer for what they've done because they've created horrible karma. But what can I say to myself? That thing opened my mind, opened my eyes to suffering and the causes of suffering to a greater degree. All the suffering that I've experienced in my life makes me a better person if I choose to turn it into compassion. In my experience, the best meditation teachers, the best yoga teachers, the best Buddhist teachers are those who have suffered the most. The less experience we have with different types of suffering doesn't mean it always is equally dramatic, in terms of like running across deserts and escaping genocide and so forth. Doesn't mean that that's the only type of suffering that we can experience. But if our life is only smooth and privileged and super nice, and we never pay attention to heartbreak, to woundedness, to suffering, our own or of that of others, we will not be a very good meditation instructor, for example, because we do not what dukkha is. We have not paid attention. So if we have not had that experience ourselves, and then what a blessing if we didn't. We need to then go into looking very closely at the dukkha of others, and volunteering where there is suffering, listening to others, observing all these permutations of suffering that exist, so that we can see how bad it is, and therefore then find the tools that can help everyone. So that's very powerful. So here, whatever bad things happen to me, done by others and also by situations simply and phenomena, that is breaking through my walls and helping me slowly rediscover my Buddha nature. So I will try to, that the result would generate, I will try to use even minor inconveniences to push against my own tendency to isolate, to contract, so that there's that expansion. And through that expansion then can flow loving kindness, bodhicitta, compassion, everything else that's good. So that's the idea, and we can apply that thought whenever we face suffering at the hands of others or simply in general. Okay, it's pulling me in the opposite direction. It's pulling me away from self-grasping and self-cherishing, if I let it. Otherwise, I can fall into greater self-cherishing. That trauma can do that. But I have the choice to transform my trauma into art, the art of mind-bending. So let's stop here. Thank you so much for your patience. I've taken a bit more of your time than necessary, but at least we completed that part. And next time we'll try to conclude the next two things, transforming our thoughts concerning our view and transforming with our actions. So thank you so much. Very happy to see you all and wishing you a blissful weekend. And see you soon. Bye-bye.